All right. This next question comes from Logan, fellow with a beanie. Let's listen to the beanie guy. Play.
Andrew, this is Logan from the Awesome Codemaster. I was just wondering, like, how do you come up with ideas for projects? Because I've seen, like, people like CG Matto or Ducky or lots of other people just every, like, week or every couple of days, they're, like, throwing out tutorials and, like, short animations and projects and that sort of stuff. Like, so how do you come up with ideas for projects?
Good question, Logan. How do you come up with ideas? The best advice I've ever heard is by the most famous artist of all, Pablo Picasso, who said, inspiration exists, but it has to find you working. And in my experience, that is completely true. You never have more ideas for a new project than when you're already working on one. It's just, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's that you see what can be done with this and you're like, oh, I could maybe do this, but that's a whole new thing. And I don't know what it is, but that's kind of how it is. So because I'm regularly working, I almost never have this problem. My problem is that I have too many ideas. And I have an Asana board, which is what our team at Polygon and Blender Guru use to map out ideas. And it's just full of stuff. It's full of tutorial ideas, scene ideas, and then I've got ideas for 2D things that I want to do in my personal time. I do not have this problem. However, I know that most beginners do, because part of being a beginner and learning art is learning how to deal with these things, like where does creativity come from? Where do ideas come from? So don't be surprised if you were to ask one of the guys on stage with a microphone, if you were to ask him, like, where do you get your ideas from? If he sort of laughs at you and says, oh, come on, ideas, they're everywhere, you know. In fact, there was it's even like a meme for the Norm Macdonald show, which was a podcast which is no longer available because it got bought by Netflix, and then they just, I don't know, killed it because he was going to have a show. But he had, it's like a meme within the Norm Macdonald community of like, one of the first questions that his sidekick had for a comedian was, where do you get your ideas from? And the guest just like stared into the camera for just 10 seconds and then went, next question, or something like that. It was hilarious. You have to see it. But anyways, it's and I think it was like, there's one with the Beatles, John Lennon and them, like when they were asked, like, where do you get your ideas from? And they just kind of like dismissed it and was like, it's one of those questions that pros don't really get because they have too many ideas. So they don't understand it. But I get it. It's not a bad question. So my advice is to start compiling an inspiration board. All right. So spend one of your practice sessions. It's an easy session. You just have to go out there and find stuff that speaks to you. So it could be ArtStation, it could be Pinterest, wherever it is, and just start putting it in a board, right, that you can access easily in the future. I like Pinterest. It's not exactly large images, but it works. Also Evernote, I use that. What else could you use? PureRef, that's one for reference, but you could just drop stuff in there and it's like a big open canvas. It just needs to be something you can easily access, and you just drop it in there and just do it like indiscriminately. Like it could also just be photos of things that speak to you, right? Like a lot of people like anime and Japanese architecture and old temples and buildings. So maybe you get photos of them if that speaks to you. That I kind of like that stuff myself. I like snow and ice and kind of like log cabins and things in a hostile, snowy environment. So maybe I have some photos of that and I just start putting it in there. And this is what you'll come back to whenever you are struggling with ideas. It's the stuff that moves you, right? And it'll help pull you out of a dark place in the future when you're struggling and you don't know what to do and you don't even know why you're putting yourself through so much pain. It'll help you out, that inspiration board. And your board will probably change over the years. Like what spoke to me a couple of years ago when I was learning 2D at the start doesn't necessarily speak to me now. It's, in fact, some of the styles and things that I thought looked good back then, I think now don't look as good, but that's totally fine. It just has to be, it's an internal tool that'll help you get there. So, once you have that as like an anchor, you should be fine, because then once you're starting work, you're on your idea, you'll think of other things you want to make, right? So you mentioned like Ducky and I think a few other YouTubers and things and the tutorials that they make. Where do they get their ideas from? I guarantee you it's just from making tutorials. It's almost like you just need something to start the process. You need a spark, right? And then once you're on that path and you've finished that one project, you've got an idea for the next one, and you do that one and then that one and then that one. And I think also there's probably a component that I don't really know where it fits into it, but if once you know how to do something well enough, you're also not scared by things that might seem too daunting or crazy. Like, maybe if you're a beginner, you're really interested in like, I don't know, a Japanese temple, right? Maybe that's kind of scary. And so you're, without even thinking it, you're kind of like stopping that thought, right? Like, I would love to make that, but I can't, obviously. So I'm just not going to have that thought. And then you're like, what can I make? And it's like, you're not thinking of like, where do I get ideas from? You're thinking of like, what can I achieve with my current skill set? So I think having that broad range of things that speaks to you, starting with something simple and not biting off more than you can chew as well, to build up to the point where eventually, maybe 2 years down the road, you can make that temple, or maybe 6 months later. I don't know. This is just raw, rough little time frames I'm throwing out there. So anyways, that'd be my advice to you, Logan. Now, before we get to the next question, a little advert. What is new at Polygon? So Polygon, for those of you who